Everyone knows Mercury is the closest planet to the Sun. It shines so brightly in our skies that ancient civilizations named it after a swift Roman god. And yet, for most of our spacefaring history, Mercury has been ignored, visited only twice, while distant giants like Jupiter and Saturn received mission after mission. It's a planet smaller than some moons, yet heavier than you'd expect. It's a world baked at 430 degrees by day, but hiding frozen water at its poles. It looks lifeless and silent, yet bears the scars of volcanoes, collapsing crust, and violent impacts that shaped its surface. Today, we're diving into the forgotten world of Mercury and the spacecraft that finally revealed its secrets, NASA's MESSENGER. I'm James, and this is Space Science and TH, where we journey together into the mysteries of the universe. Mercury has always been there, easy to spot with the naked eye. Ancient astronomers tracked its quick movements across the dawn and evening skies, knowing it was something special. But in the modern age of space exploration, Mercury became the forgotten child of the solar system. Think about it. Mars had rovers rolling across its rusty plains. Jupiter had a whole armada of a spacecraft. Even distant Uranus and Neptune got a flyby. But Mercury? After Mariner 10 zipped past in 1974, mapping less than half the planet, no one went back for more than 3 decades. It wasn't because Mercury was boring, it was because Mercury was almost impossible. Getting a probe there isn't the problem. Slowing it down enough to stay there, that's the real challenge. The sun's gravity acts like a cosmic waterfall, pulling spacecraft in faster and faster. To fight against it, you need fuel, and fuel means weight, and weight makes rockets bigger, more expensive, and less practical. And then there's the heat. Temperatures on Mercury's surface swing from 170 at night to over 430 during the day. Any spacecraft brave enough to orbit Mercury would need armor against a furnace on one side and the chill of deep space on the other. For decades, Mercury was untouchable. Every scientist knew the problem. Getting there was easy, but stopping there was nearly impossible. It was like trying to swim upstream against a cosmic waterfall. Then, in the mid-1980s, an orbital mechanics expert named Chen Wan-yen proposed something extraordinary. Instead of charging straight at Mercury, what if a spacecraft took the long way, using the gravity of Earth, Venus, and Mercury itself to gradually bleed off speed? It was a path of patience, looping around the sun 15 times, covering nearly 8 billion kilometers before finally arriving. A path that would take 6.5 years. At first, her idea was dismissed. Too complicated, too long. But by the late 1990s, NASA was listening. They knew it was the only way, and so in 2004, the MESSENGER spacecraft, barely the size of a small car, left Earth on the most roundabout journey ever designed. It flew past Earth once, Venus twice, Mercury 3 times, each pass like a delicate dance, trimming just enough at speed to survive the sun's pull. Along the way, it used even its solar panels as sails, catching radiation to help slow its flight. A trick of physics so subtle, it almost sounded like science fiction. But even with all the planning, there was drama. In 2009, during its third flyby of Mercury, MESSENGER slipped into safe mode. For 7 long hours, the spacecraft was silent, and the mission team worried they might never hear from it again. They waited. They recalculated. And then finally, MESSENGER woke back up, charging its batteries, and rejoining the mission. Relief swept through the control room. Humanity's only chance at unlocking Mercury's secrets had survived. And so, after years of looping through the inner solar system, on March 11, 2011, MESSENGER fired its thrusters one last time and slipped into orbit around Mercury. For the first time in history, we had a permanent presence circling the planet closest to the Sun. The first images MESSENGER sent back shattered old assumptions. The first images MESSENGER sent back challenged old assumptions. For a planet once thought to be quiet and lifeless, Mercury turned out to be full of surprises. Let's start with its size. Mercury is the smallest planet in the solar system, so small that two of Jupiter's moons, Ganymede and Titan, are actually bigger, and yet Mercury outweighs them both. Why? Because inside it hides a giant iron core. Roughly 70% of Mercury is metal, making it the most metallic planet we know. That gives it a density nearly equal to Earth's, even though Mercury is barely a third of Earth's size. If Mercury were scaled up to Earth's dimensions, its gravity would feel almost the same as ours. And speaking of gravity, that brings us to another paradox. A single day on Mercury is longer than each year. It takes 88 Earth days for Mercury to circle the Sun, but it takes 59 Earth days to spin once on its axis. Because of a strange orbital resonance, the result is mind-bending. From sunrise to sunrise, a day on Mercury lasts 2 Mercurian years. Imagine standing on Mercury. You'd watch the sun rise quickly, slow to a crawl, pause, then unexpectedly move backwards in the sky before finally continuing its path. A sunrise that rewinds itself. A night that lasts an entire year. No science fiction movie could invent something stranger. MESSENGER also revealed that Mercury has a comet-like tail. When the solar wind slumps into its thin exosphere, atoms are ripped away and streamed into space. From afar, Mercury literally looks like a planet disguised as a comet, glowing with sodium like a faint yellow lantern. But perhaps the most astonishing discovery was water. On a planet that can reach 430°, craters at the poles turned out to be hiding frozen ice, shielded permanently from sunlight. Earth-based telescopes had hinted at it, but MESSENGER confirmed it. A quadrillion kilograms of ice locked away in shadow. Enough to support future explorers if humanity ever dares settle there. And Mercury is far from silent. Its surface is scarred by Caloris Basin, a massive impact crater over 1,500 kilometers wide. The strike that formed it was so violent that it shook the entire planet, creating bizarre, weird terrain on the opposite side of the globe. Elsewhere, narrow cliffs stretch for hundreds of kilometers, proof that Mercury is shrinking as it cools, over 14 kilometers smaller in diameter since its birth. Imagine an entire planet crumpling in on itself. So here it was, hiding in plain sight all along, a planet smaller than some moons, heavier than expected, shrinking as it ages, with water at its poles and a day that outlasts its own year. Mercury wasn't boring. It was a puzzle, a paradox, and a revelation. Today, Mercury looks quiet, almost frozen in time, but its scars tell a very different story. Long ago, this little planet was a furnace. MESSENGER revealed ancient lava plains covering vast regions, proof that Mercury once flowed with fire. Some craters, like Raditladi, are smooth inside, not because they escaped impact, but because they were filled to the brim with molten rock. An asteroid slammed down, cracked the crust, and lava surged upward, pouring across the floor until it cooled into a glassy plain. Other craters show even a stranger behavior. Rachmaninov, for example, has rippled cracks inside its basin, the marks of magma slowly bubbling up from below. And then there's Navoi, a 66-kilometer-wide crater that shouldn't exist the way it does. Instead of a central peak formed by an impact, Navoi looks carved out as if a massive volcanic eruption pushed it open from within. This suggests Mercury wasn't shaped only by impacts, but also by eruptions powerful enough to transform its surface. And it wasn't just lava, there were ash clouds too. In some places, MESSENGER saw fields coated with a fine dust. Volcanic ash blasted skyward, then falling back like snow. Scientists described it as fiery snow. Imagine standing there with glowing flakes drifting down from the sky. Mercury was a world of rivers of magma and storms of ash, a chaos few planets could match. But over time, the fury faded. As Mercury's interior cooled, its crust contracted. Long, towering escarps, cliffs hundreds of kilometers long, rose across its face like wrinkles on aging skin. From MESSENGER's data, we know the planet has shrunk by over 14 kilometers in diameter since it formed. That's an entire world crumpling slowly inward. So when we look at Mercury today, we're not just seeing craters, we're seeing the remains of a battlefield. Lava seas hardened into stone. Volcanoes that once roared, now silenced. A planet that melted, burned, and then shrank under its own weight. Mercury endured its fiery past, but it has never forgotten it. When MESSENGER finally slipped into Mercury's orbit in 2011, expectations were modest. NASA hoped it would last 1 year, maybe return 1,000 images, just enough to fill in the blanks left by Mariner 10. Instead, MESSENGER exceeded every dream. Over the next 4 years, it sent back more than 200,000 photographs, mapping the entire surface in detail we had never imagined. It captured the color variations that revealed hidden chemistry. It spotted mysterious depressions called hollows, unique formations found nowhere else in the solar system. And it traced Mercury's fragile magnetosphere, showing it was alive with magnetic reconnections happening 100 times more often than on Earth. But as with all missions, fuel was the clock. Each orbit, MESSENGER fired its thrusters to keep from being dragged down by Mercury's pull. By late 2014, the reserves were nearly gone. Engineers squeezed every lost burst from the tanks, even repurposing helium normally used for pressure. But by April 2015, the end was inevitable. On April 30th, 2015, MESSENGER fired its thrusters one final time. Hours later, traveling at over 14,000 kilometers per hour, it impacted Mercury's surface. There was no audience to witness it. No plume visible from Earth, though only silence. A spacecraft that had journeyed billions of kilometers, circling a planet once thought beyond our reach, completed its mission by becoming part of the world it studied. But MESSENGER's mission was far from wasted. In its short lifetime, it transformed our understanding of Mercury, confirming that water ice could exist in extreme conditions, revealing a planet that shrank and fractured over time and uncovering a geological history more dramatic than anyone had imagined. It was, in every sense, a torch burning bright, then extinguishing itself to leave behind light for the rest of us. For all the answers MESSENGER gave us, it left behind just as many mysteries. one of the strangest lies in the region, called Pantheon Fossae. From above, it looks like shattered glass, fractures radiating outward in every direction. At its center sits the crater Apollodorus, but oddly, it isn't quite aligned. Was the crater even responsible for the fractures, or did something erupt from beneath, cracking the crust like a pressure bubble ready to burst? To this day, no one knows. Then there are the ray systems. These spider-like streaks radiate from impact sites, stretching hundreds, even thousands of kilometers across the planet's surface. On Earth or the Moon, craters form neat circular splash patterns. But Mercury's rays look like a cosmic fireworks display. For years, scientists couldn't recreate them in labs. The breakthrough came only when someone realized the secret was chaos, an uneven surface, rough and jagged, like Mercury itself. And let's not forget the hollows. These mysterious depressions scattered across the surface aren't impact craters. They seem to form when volatile materials inside the rock suddenly vanish, sublimated by Mercury's brutal sun. But how exactly? And why do they shine so brightly compared to their surroundings? The answers remain out of reach. That's why the story isn't over. Even as MESSENGER met its end, Europe and Japan launched a new mission, BepiColombo. Right now, it's on its way, set to arrive in 2025. Equipped with the latest instruments, it will probe Mercury's magnetosphere, exosphere, and hidden geology more deeply than ever before. So Mercury's tale is still being written, and the next chapter promises even more revelations. When we look at Mercury today, we're reminded that its size doesn't define importance. Even the smallest world can tell the biggest story, if we're willing to listen. And maybe that's Mercury's greatest lesson: survival in the harshest furnace, endurance against all odds. The scars on its surface are not just wounds, but memories written across time, waiting for us to read. Because the first planet is still holding the first chapters of our solar system's story.